co-signing? All right. Good afternoon. This measuring mission effort began in June of 2022. The original group was our dear friend Kurt Prister, the late Kurt Prister, Barb Moore, Danny Becker, Tommy Hesney, Pastor Laura, and myself. This effort was led by Pastor Laura. Laura used this model to study the mission efforts of her previous congregation in Covington. Laura was with us for the entire process. We used a study model that had been prepared by Rod Frohman. This is my workbook from it. Rod and his colleague, James Evinger, developed the model, and they've used it at a dozen or more churches. Rod was with us from the beginning at every single session, either in person or virtually. Rod recently retired from Third Presbyterian in Rochester, and he's now living in North Carolina. But he was with us for the entire process, both the measuring mission part and the mission implementation team. Pastor Laura, Pastor Rod, and I were the three involved from beginning to end of this effort. We did a tremendous amount of study of our congregation's mission projects. We cataloged 57 of them, studied them intensely. I'm not going to cover that. One of the most important and interesting aspects of this study is this spectrum that exists, reflected in this slide, of the mission activities, the nature of them. So at one end of the spectrum, you have giving money, which is certainly a good charitable effort. There are plenty of organizations that need resources. At the other end is mission projects that involve the establishment and development of personal relationships between the people serving and those being served. And that is the most effective way to preach the gospel, is through interpersonal relationships. And so the mission implementation team selected 5 projects that we feel, based on the analysis that we did, have the greatest potential to provide meaningful faith development for both those participating from our congregation and those being served. And so those are the 5 mission projects that we'd like to share with you now.
So the Advent House is the first one. It's a 2-bed hospice care home that provides physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of the dying. It's managed by the Perinton Ecumenical Ministries, along with 13 other churches. And the volunteer opportunities include resident care, housekeeping, snow removal, gardening, fundraising, which is the golf outing or the annual dinner that the Advent House hosts. And Sweet Charity is a separate facility that take in donations of household goods, furniture, so they're always looking for donations. And they also need help moving large items for customers that make the purchase. And I have a site tour set up on October 19th at 9 a.m. If you're interested, please let me know. I know, and since this slide went out, I've learned that also they need clerical help at the Advent House. And they also accept donations, financial donations. Does anybody have any questions? Like I said, if you're interested, let me know, and I'll get in touch with you, and we can connect about the tour. Or if you can't make the tour and you're interested in helping out with one of these volunteer opportunities, I can update you on that also.
Cameron Community Ministries supports a highly challenged neighborhood in the Lyle Otis area of the city of Rochester. Ridiculously crushing poverty, ridiculously high crime. And the programs that they offer are designed to support their neighbors in that community. Meals during the course of the week, Monday through Friday. Over 100 folks a day at this point. The number, as you might expect, is growing almost on a daily basis. It's primarily children now, but a growing number of seniors are participants in this aspect of their ministry. Clothing boutique, it supports 219 families. After school programs, they have 2 of them that they maintain right now for kids coming like off the bus. One is at the Cameron campus, and the other one's at a nearby charter school. They also have the teen center open every single day to help give kids someplace to go. These are big challenges because this supports those working parents in the area to give them a safe place they know their kids are while they finish their workday. And in that neighborhood, in our neighborhood, you might consider how poignant that would be in a high crime neighborhood like the one around Cameron. You can imagine what a horror it would be to worry about your kid without a safe place to be after school. The food pantry there is a food pantry that supports the emergency needs of the folks in the neighborhood, which happen nearly daily. They have a particular concern right now because United Way has cut back their funding in general. That impacts FoodLink, and FoodLink is their primary source of food for the pantry. So there's a challenge there that they need to be cognizant of. And then the vocational programs. The 3 I mentioned earlier are in the service were the barber certification program, the safe food handling program, and the logistics program that they were doing with FedEx. Unfortunately, the safe food handling program and the FedEx program had to be curtailed because, if you recall from the news earlier in the year, an individual who was charged with being the fiduciary for a very large federal grant that funded Cameron and a number of other ministries that support Cameron-type projects around the city embezzled funds, and the federal grant was curtailed. That cut about $90,000 out of their budget in a blink of an eye, and it obviously is a terrible challenge. Now, their particular needs are around these programs. They need folks to help out with the meals. Again, a growing number of folks there taking advantage of that program, particularly on Thursday mornings because that's when the truck comes from FoodLink, so there's a need for physical labor first thing to get that done. Our youth has participated in supporting the clothing boutique in terms of sorting and helping clean and organize the place. That's a constant basis, just like any retail clothing store would need that kind of work. After school programs are usually in need of folks too. They do their own certification programs, but they'd also honor the background checks, of course, that we do with our staff that have contact with youth. Food pantry, you'll hear more about the Perinton food shelf here in just a minute, but they will always have this need. Vocational programs are not something that we can probably support unless anybody here happens to be a master barber. That is a requirement to be able to honor or give somebody a barber certification or sign off on it. There are also a number of physical plant challenges that the folks there have. Some of them are a challenge of timing and logistics rather than limited riches. For example, the folks at Wegmans have gifted them several large coolers worth multiple thousands of dollars, but they need some help doing electrical work on the building so they can hook them up and turn them on. And that costs time and money. They have lighting that has to be redone in their dining room. There's some equipment that is used for both access and also loading food goods into the building. There at Cameron, the parking lot is at a higher elevation than the floor is in the kitchen and the dining room. Sir.
Just so I don't forget, the Knights of Columbus that operate out of St. Jerome's in East Rochester has electricians that are looking to do that type of work.
awesome, I will do that, thank you very much. That kind of electrical work is necessary to effectively repair a lift that raises and lowers, well, pallets of food, but also people who are challenged with walkers or wheelchairs, so they can't use the dining room. They also have flooring for the new flooring for the kitchen, and money set aside to buy it. However, they need more funds and they need somebody to put it down. Primarily, they'll need an electrician who can be the project manager for the implementation of a bunch of those things that I've mentioned. Those aren't on the list because they're sort of capital items, unique kind of things that are one and done, but there are always things like that in their facility that need doing. Does anybody have any questions about any of the things I've mentioned today, or something additional? Speak to that's come to mind. Okay. If you have any questions at all, as Laura mentioned during the service and what have you, there's contact information. But you can reach out by filling out the form that was in all the programs. You can call me directly, Jeff Saylor. I'm the current chair of the mission committee. Or leave a message at the church office, and I'll be happy to get back to you and share information that might make it possible for you to participate. Cameron's doing wonderful work. There's a long list of things positive they can do, and there's a long list of things that we can do to help them do that. So thank you so much.
My name's Judy Ferguson. I'm with the Missions Committee as well, and I worked on the Perinton food shelf presentation. Many of the things that go on with the food shelf are typically behind the scenes. They do have delivery people, which are kind of in the business of delivering to the people in the community, or being present to hand that out when I think they do have some that come to the facility to pick up their food. So those opportunities that are available through the food shelf range from perhaps shopping or picking and packing an order for people, purchases of food, the shopping that would be part of the financial donations that come in are used for perishable, like produce, milk, bread, that kind of thing, that aren't stocked there at the shelf. The shelf pretty much is a non-perishable warehouse, if you will, of all kinds of canned foods, boxed breads, pastas, that kind of thing. The volunteer opportunities also can involve, if you're so inclined to assist with like board matters, become part of their board to help with the functionality. As I had talked about earlier, most of the things that are done through the food shelf involve either a financial donation, food donations. They have a lot of church organizations, schools, businesses, and so forth, individuals that will organize food drives. Most of the food is either collected, like for instance, we collect here, we have boxes by our front door that people can sort their food coming into, that we will take usually to the drop-off point over at the community center. There's a group that picks up from the food shelf at the community center and the library, as well as have drop-off right at the facility. That the people at the food shelf aren't usually there. Most of it's done remote, but if you have a large group that has a large donation, they will make themselves present so that you can deliver that to them. Obviously the big thing is volunteering time in whatever capacity that is able to be fulfilled, whether it's the shopping, there in the facility doing picking and so forth. We are having time there to the facility to get a tour, and that's going to be on October 5th at 9 a.m. If you are interested, please leave your name and number, and we'll be in touch.
Hi, everyone. So, Habitat for Humanity. Habitat is a long-term mission here at the Perinton Presbyterian Church, so we've been supporting that both financially and through volunteers for quite a long time. And so I just want to go back and just kind of touch on, Ed talked previously about that spectrum of moving from charity up to bonding or a community involvement within organizations. And Habitat is one that represents that kind of where we've moved up the spectrum, because so our church, we are part of the Ecumenical Ministries of Perinton, which is an organization of 13 churches that has a number of volunteer organizations that they support. So we are part of that, and that's how traditionally we had built homes through that organization. But over the last 2 years, we have combined, and we are now part of the Greater Rochester Interfaith Builders. And what that is that Perinton congregation, in combination with the 5 other faith-based ministries around the Rochester area, those are in Brighton and Greece, and there's Harvest Home, but there's Penfield is another one. So we've joined forces with all the 6 organizations have joined forces, so we're building homes together. And what this has allowed us to do is to increase our build rate. So in the past, we would build 1 home, and then there'd be 3 years while we were raising funds for as part of the Perinton congregations, and then we would build another home. But as part of GRIB, we're now in a position where we can continuously build homes, which opens up a lot more volunteer opportunities. So we've already, since, again, over the last 2 years, we've completed construction of our first home. We're building our second home right now. We're focused in the Beechwood neighborhood, or that's where Habitat is focused, is in the Beechwood neighborhood. But we're building our second home. We already have funding for we're working on funding for the third home. So that has allowed us to increase the volume of how we can support the organization, because we are building them in combination with Flower City Habitat for Humanity. So we're excited about that. It's working very well, the combination of all these 6 organizations in combining our efforts. So when we talk about volunteer opportunities, there are volunteer opportunities no matter what your skill level is. You do not have to be a master carpenter to volunteer for Habitat. They can always accommodate, no matter what if you have physical limitations or just if you're learning to do these skills, they will work with you. We have a volunteer day that we've organized. It's going to be on Saturday, October 26th. We have 8 slots available, and that's just by the nature of it. They can only have so many people on site a given day, and so we're opening that up. We're looking for volunteers on that particular day. If we get a lot of interest, there are other days that we could go and reserve for our church, and they're always open for individuals to volunteer on their own. So right at this point, we're planning again for October 26th. And if someone is looking for more information, if you want to learn more about Habitat and maybe not sure if it's a right fit for you, what I'm doing is opening up that if you want to visit the site on that day, where they're currently building, it's 207 Melville in Rochester. But we can invite people to come and just to kind of see what goes on. We'll talk a little bit about it. You can see the construction site and just to begin to learn a little bit more. So if you're interested in learning more about Habitat, let me know. And I also will be sending out information about our volunteer day and recruiting volunteers for the 26th. Thank you.
And I'm talking about refugee ministries. One thing that's kind of hard for all of us to comprehend is what the life of the refugee was as they traveled from whatever job they were doing when they left to here. And so what we're doing is we're having a simulation that we will do on the 27th. And on that, you will have an opportunity to witness the path that they tend to travel. There will be a tent in there that they would have had to stay in, and a number of other things. And what you'll receive is a headset that will tell you the story of a family or an individual as they went through the process of coming to the United States. As you heard earlier, some of the situations that they left were horrible, the way that they had to leave them. There's groups of people that are working on world relief. That's the immigrant supports system, being good neighbors. They make teams and welcome people. They provide tutoring. They help them get housing. They help them get medical care and jobs. They want to work. They want to be good family members, good community members. Saints Place does something similar. They provide clothing, furniture, and tutoring, and friendship to the people coming in. Then there's El Shaddai. That's a church that is welcoming to all people coming in from all faiths. There's going to be a joint worship service with them on October 6th at 11 o'clock. Have any questions? Contact me if you're interested. Thank you.
So now I want to take a few minutes and just to talk about the work of the mission implementation team and how we arrived at the 5 and how it impacts the other missions that the church is involved with. So as Ed touched on this was a 2-year journey, first with the Measuring Mission team, who did a tremendous amount of work of gathering information, interviewing members of the church, interviewing community leaders, going on tours through in one case, going through the city and touring that, getting an understanding of the environments where some of these missions exist. And so they did, again, a tremendous amount of work to gather that, and that gave us the information for our mission implementation team to then go forward, look at all of our missions, and determine our path forward. So the first thing, again, the objective of the team was to go through each of the mission projects and identify those top 5 that we were going to focus on for the next year. And the one thing that I want to stress is that these are the focus for the next year. And on an annual basis, I would say the mission, our team, as along with the mission committee, will be evaluating that. And this will be an ongoing process to say at the end of the year, we'll reflect on what we're doing, and then if we decide we need to change one out, maybe one of the missions is not working, or one is very well sustained, and we want to bring another one in as a 5. So that will be an ongoing process of evaluating those and making certain we have the right ones that we're focused on, because we do want this is a journey. This is not just a program we're going to start. This is a journey we want it to be ongoing. So again, what we went through, and I'll take you through some of the details. We did extensive assessment across 5 criteria, and then we went and we categorized them, again, finally to arrive at the top 5 that we chose to focus on for the next year. So this here, what we're seeing here, this is a summary of some of the criteria that we went through. So each of these items here had sub-items that we went and we looked at, and it's part of our analysis. So we looked at their geographical location. Are they local? Are they regional? Are they international? Because we still want to be supporting a broad spectrum and be supporting international missions where we can. Obviously, there's limitations on the types of support that we can provide those. But we looked at, does it involve advocacy on behalf of the people that are served? Who's the project sponsor? Is it something that we sponsor solely, or is it part of an organization? We also looked at the contact for the people served. This is an area where we spent a great deal of time talking about the missions, because it was really just, obviously any mission, you have some contact with either the organization. But this was understanding, do you have direct contact with the people that are being served? You know, in the case of Habitat, you're working with the homeowner, they're often there at the site, you get to know them. Obviously at Advent House, where you're working with the patients there, you have direct contact with them. And so that was an important aspect, and we had a lot of discussion around somewhere, well, you might think we have contact, but we really don't, and just because of the nature of it. We also looked at how does it fit in with the identity of our church. Is it a good fit there? Is it part of our congregational life? And this had got into, is it known within the church? Do we celebrate it? Do we educate people about what that particular mission does? And then we also looked at what are the outcomes for it? Again, does it grow them spiritually? And because that's an important part of it. And then the final one was talking about, is there a toxic outcome that could be potentially part of that? And when we talk about a toxic outcome, let's talk about, just as an example, maybe a mission that involves food and food donations. And the toxic outcome there would be that if that resulted in people becoming dependent, long-term dependency on that, instead of it being a bridge to move on in their life, maybe they have a difficult time where they're just there and they're part of it for a short period of time. But in this case, you know, a potential toxic outcome could be if they're involved with it for years. So that was another factor that we looked at. And so I just want to touch on, Ed already talked about this, you know, again, this spectrum of moving from charity on up to community development. And one of the things that was apparent as we went through ours, the vast majority of our existing missions that we support are charity. Now, I want to state clearly that there's nothing wrong with charity, and that being the sole, you know, our involvement with them. Certainly on some of them, that's really the limitations on what you can do, particularly if you talk about international ones and such. But there's nothing wrong with it, but what we found is that was the majority of them. But what we really want to see is that these missions, the ones that we focus on, that they mature on up that spectrum. And I'll use Habitat as the example of where that's probably partnership, maybe only almost into the community development, because we've combined, because it's gone beyond just our church to the larger organization with the Greater Rochester Interfaith Builders. So this was one of the key ones, and again, we spent a lot of time discussing, is it charity? Is it charity with contact? Where does it fit? And we had quite a few that were charity with contact as well. So then from there, we looked at them and said, okay, so what are we going to do after we ranked them all? We went through, are we going to retain it? Are we going to keep this one? Are we going to end it? In certain cases, and you'll see there that we did decide that some of the missions we're going to move on from. Was there a way that we could combine them? And John's, the refugee ministry one is one where we said, hey, we should take Saints Place and World Relief and El Shaddai, and that should come into refugee ministry. And then is there opportunities to improve it? Could it be expanded? And that's where we see, you know, certainly there's opportunities for those to be able to expand them. So this is again, taking all of our missions. What was the number, Ed? I'm trying to remember what the total number is. Somewhere around 57 missions is what we started off evaluating. And so obviously we had the top 5. And then you see the other categories in there of ones that we're going to continue to support and support in different ways. So just to go briefly through those. So the first one is, here's the list of missions that we've decided that we are going to step away from. And this is not a reflection on the missions themselves. Some of them are no longer, that we've learned that are no longer operating as a mission, but some of them we felt that they weren't a fit for us as a church right at this point. And again, that's not a reflection on them individually, but we just decided that it was the time was, now is the time where we could go and move on from them. And the other thing I want to make certain that people are clear of, this was not a way to decrease the mission budget and the investment that the church is making in missions. Actually, what we did is we took the money where we were contributing to these, and we're investing that into the Focus 5. So we've increased the funding on those particular missions with the idea that we're going to continue, we want to increase the support financially as well as increase the support from a volunteer standpoint. Then we've got a couple of categories where we're going to continue to support the presbytery, both our giving to Presbyterian Synod and General Assembly. We have line items in the budget where we make financial support for those. We have organizations that just use the building, and we're going to continue to do that. AA, the Scouts, as well as Sophie. So we're going to continue to support that. And that's something that we extend out to these groups. It's not, there's no cost to them to use the facility. Then from there, we got into the missions that we are going to continue to support at the level we're doing now. Some of them are financial, some of them are volunteers, some of them across both. So these are missions, again, that we want to continue to support both financially or through volunteers, and we'll continue those at their current level. This is, you see the list here, and then also here are some additional ones that are ones, again, that we're going to continue to support. So that takes us through, again, on the method we went through. As I said before, we have the 5. They're the 5 for next year. In our earlier session, there was a question around how are we going to evaluate these? How are we going to, what's our method there? That's still under development. We're going to be working with that. Our team here will be working it. We'll be having regular reports to session around how the program is progressing, and to make certain that we do have a structure in place to evaluate them so that we continue to make the right decisions for our congregation on where we're focused. So I'll pause there. Are there any questions? Okay. If there are no questions, I think we thank you for your time. Appreciate you coming, and look forward to everyone's support. Thank you.